Welcome to this tutorial, in which I discuss the Computer Misuse Act of 1990. In this tutorial, I'm going to tell you about the history of the Computer Misuse Act 1990, and in particular, I'm going to tell you why, and how it became UK law, what it brings into law, and what the penalties are. So, let me begin by telling you about the history of the Act. It all began when Robert Shifrin and Stephen Gould, using conventional home computers and modems, in late 1984 and early 1985, gained unauthorized access to British Telecom's Prestel service. They acquired a set of valid logon credentials by shoulder surfing a Prestel BT engineer and observing him type in a username of 8 twos and a password of 1234. Then, using the stolen credentials, they logged on and explored the system and gained access to the personal mailbox of Prince Philip. However, their activities were monitored, and they were eventually identified and charged, and so the legal case began. They were both charged under Section 1 of the Forgery and Counterfeiting Act 1981, with defrauding BT by manufacturing a false instrument. As a result, they were tried at Southwark Crown Court, and were both convicted, and fined £600 and £700. Unsurprisingly, the defense lawyers at the time thought that the charge was pushing the boundaries of the Forgery and Counterfeiting Act, and as a consequence, Shifrin and Gould appealed to the Criminal Division of the Court of Appeal. Their counsel cited the lack of evidence showing that the two had not attempted to obtain material gain from their exploits, and claimed that the Forgery and Counterfeiting Act had been misapplied. The reason that the Forgery and Counterfeiting Act of 1981 was cited is because there wasn't a law at the time that prohibited hacking. So, not surprisingly, on appeal, they were both acquitted by Lord Justice Lane. However, probably because Prince Philip's account was hacked, the prosecution was unhappy with this decision, so they took the case to the House of Lords. However, much to the frustration of the prosecution, in 1988, the Lords upheld the acquittal. Furthermore, Lord Justice Brandon, one of the appeal judges, said that the conduct amounted to dishonestly gaining access to the relevant Prestel databank by a trick, and that such behavior was not a criminal offense. Thus, it was, as a direct consequence of this ruling, that the Computer Misuse Act of 1990 came about. So, now let's have a look at what the Computer Misuse Act of 1990 is. The law says that unauthorized access to computer material carries a penalty of 2 years in prison and a large fine. So, if you open a computer file that you are not authorized to see, then you could go to prison. The law says that if you gain unauthorized access to a computer system with the intent to commit or facilitate a crime, then you could face 5 years in prison and a large fine. The law also says that if you make unauthorized modification of computer material, files, etc., then this also carries a penalty of 5 years in prison and a large fine. If you make, supply, or even obtain material, such as software, that could be used in computer misuse offenses, then, in this case, you could face 10 years in prison and receive an unlimited fine. As time passed, as you would expect, the Computer Misuse Act of 1990 has been amended. On 3 May 2015, Part 2 of the Serious Crime Act came into effect. Section 41 of this Act states that where the unauthorized misuse of a computer results in serious damage to human welfare or to national security, the maximum sentence is life imprisonment. It also states that where the unauthorized act results in serious damage to the economy or the environment, then the maximum sentence is 14 years. Section 42 of this Act says that, regardless of an intention to supply a tool, it also makes it an offense to use personal tools, ones that you may have created yourself, to commit computer misuse offenses. Section 43 of the 2015 Act extends the territorial scope of the Computer Misuse Act and provides a legal basis to prosecute a UK national who violates the Computer Misuse Act whilst outside the UK, provided that the offence was also an offence in the country where it took place. So, in summary, if you work with computers, be aware that you must not log on as someone else or modify any computer files without the appropriate authority to do so. Well, that concludes this brief tutorial on the Computer Misuse Act of 1990. I hope you found it useful, and don't forget to check out the other information security tutorials available. And thank you for watching.